Hi biologists, it's Tam here. This is a really short video just taking you through the lesson 6 plasmolysis practical. First thing is just to pause the video and complete activity 1. You've actually done this Kahoot before, but hopefully you should get 100% on it. Next, I'd like you to draw an arrow to indicate which way you think the water is going to flow by osmosis, and you should also explain your answer as well, please. So pause the video and try that. And we should find that water is going to move down the water potential gradient. So if you remember, we looked at this when we did the independent study and also the lesson activity on water potential. But in osmosis, water always flows down the water potential gradient. And I find it sometimes helps to sketch this little image out over here. Sometimes that's a little bit easier to imagine. But water will always flow in this direction, and it flows from a less negative to a more negative water potential. So in this image here, you can see that minus 20 is not as negative as minus 112. So water will flow down the water potential gradient from the cell on the right to the cell on the left. And water will also flow from both of these cells into the cell at the bottom. And that's again because the top two cells have a less negative water potential than the bottom cell. So if we were to explain that, we would say that water moves from a less negative to a more negative water potential down the water potential gradient. And so that's a really key phrase that we want to include, by osmosis. So for activity 3, we'd like you to pause the video and make some flashcards on the below practicals. Now, one thing just to note here is that we've done the top 3 practicals, but not the bottom one. So you may want to just quickly go and complete the water potential and change in mass and length of a potato for the independent study first, and then come back to this activity. And a suggested template for your flashcards is here. So we'd recommend identifying, first of all, the independent variable. So what is it that you're going to change? And can you suggest units that you'd use for that? Maybe you'd also suggest and think about a range of different values that you're going to use. What's the dependent variable? So what are you measuring? And again, can you suggest units for this? What are the controlled variables? So just be careful here. So these are controlled variables, not control. You have a control test, but actually it's controlled variables. And these are things that you want to make sure stay the same, so that the only thing affecting your independent variable is your dependent variable. So think about what your controlled variables could be. Try and give 3, at least 3, and describe how they will be controlled. Now, one common error here is that a lot of people often say the control variable is going to be temperature. And then they say they will control it by using a thermometer. Now, as you guys know, thermometers measure temperature, but they don't control it. They don't maintain a certain temperature. So that's not actually really a very good way of describing how you'd control temperature. A better way to describe it would be to say something like use a thermostatically controlled water bath, because that will change as the temperature of the water changes, and it will regulate the temperature at a certain point. And then finally, you want to talk about the methodology. So a few good things to say here. First of all, it's always good to sketch a little diagram. Then you want to summarize your methodology. Try to summarize it into maybe 4 or 5 key steps. You don't need loads of details with that. So you don't need lots of detail about the exact volumes that you're going to be sort of transferring and things like that. You just need the 4 key things that you're going to be doing. Will you repeat the experiment and why? And will you calculate the mean and why? Okay, and so again, think here about reliability. So you're repeating to check reliability of your data. And finally, please can you pause the video and complete activity 4? This is your final activity. Thanks.